The war in Ukraine has become one of the first large-scale conflicts where drones are not a supporting tool but a central force shaping how battles are fought, understood, and survived. From the earliest days of the invasion, unmanned aerial vehicles transformed the battlefield into a constantly observed space, where movement, concealment, and surprise became increasingly difficult. Small reconnaissance drones hover above trenches, forests, and ruined towns, turning the sky into a persistent witness that feeds real-time intelligence directly to artillery units and command centers. What once required complex surveillance systems is now achieved with relatively inexpensive platforms, giving even small units the ability to see far beyond their immediate surroundings. This shift fundamentally alters the tempo of war, compressing the gap between detection and destruction. In Ukraine, drones have become an equalizer, allowing forces with fewer resources to compensate through precision, adaptability, and innovation. Commercial drones modified for military use deliver explosives directly onto vehicles, trenches, and supply positions, blurring the line between civilian technology and battlefield weaponry. Russia, in turn, deploys its own drone fleets, ranging from reconnaissance platforms to loitering munitions designed to hunt targets autonomously, extending the reach of strikes deep behind the front. The result is a battle space where danger is omnipresent, not only from artillery and infantry, but from unseen observers above. Soldiers adapt by moving at night, hiding under camouflage nets, and constantly changing positions, yet the sense of being watched never fully disappears. This psychological pressure becomes as significant as physical threat, wearing down morale and increasing stress over prolonged periods. The drone war also accelerates the learning cycle of combat, as footage from strikes is reviewed, shared, and analyzed within hours, allowing tactics to evolve rapidly. Successes and failures alike become lessons, turning the battlefield into a feedback loop of innovation and adaptation. At the same time, the widespread use of drones raises ethical and strategic questions about escalation, accountability, and the future of warfare. As autonomous and semi-autonomous systems become more prevalent, decisions once made by humans are increasingly shaped by algorithms and remote operators far from the front. The Ukraine war thus offers a preview of conflicts to come, where visibility replaces uncertainty, and survival depends on mastering the invisible contest above the battlefield. Drones do not simply add a new layer to war, they redefine it, making the sky an extension of the front line and ensuring that modern combat is fought as much through sensors and signals as through soldiers on the ground. As the drone war expands, it reshapes not only tactics but the entire logic of battlefield survival, forcing constant adaptation at every level of command. Traditional concepts of rear areas and safe zones erode as drones extend surveillance and strike capability far beyond the front line, making logistics hubs, command posts, and supply routes increasingly vulnerable. Both sides invest heavily in electronic warfare to jam signals, disrupt navigation, and blind enemy drones, turning the airspace into an invisible contest of frequencies and countermeasures. This struggle creates cycles of advantage and vulnerability, where new drone models or software updates can briefly tilt the balance before counters emerge. For soldiers on the ground, this rapid evolution means that tactics learned one month may become obsolete the next, reinforcing a sense that the battlefield is constantly shifting even when front lines remain static. The accessibility of drone technology accelerates this dynamic, as innovation no longer depends solely on state industries but also on volunteer networks, engineers, and frontline improvisation. Ukraine's ability to adapt commercial technology into effective weapons highlights how modern wars draw on civilian ecosystems of creativity and problem-solving. Russia's response emphasizes scale and endurance, deploying large numbers of drones to overwhelm defenses and normalize constant aerial presence. The result is a saturation environment where the sky itself becomes contested terrain. Beyond immediate combat effects, drones also influence how the war is communicated and perceived. Strike footage circulates widely, shaping narratives of success, resilience, and technological prowess. These images compress complex realities into powerful symbols, reinforcing morale at home while signaling capability to adversaries. Yet this visibility carries risks, as publicized tactics can be studied and countered, turning transparency into vulnerability. The drone war thus blurs boundaries between battlefield, media space, and industrial capacity, integrating them into a single system of competition. As losses mount on both sides, drones increasingly replace manned missions, reducing risk to operators while raising questions about distance and responsibility in killing. The operator, separated by screens and signals, experiences war differently from the soldier in the trench, creating a new psychological landscape of combat. This separation may lower immediate barriers to engagement while deepening long-term ethical challenges. The Ukraine conflict demonstrates that drones are not a temporary adaptation but a structural shift, embedding themselves into doctrine, training, and strategy. Their influence will persist beyond this war, shaping how future conflicts are fought, limited, and understood. In this evolving environment, control of the sky at low altitude becomes as decisive as control of land, marking a transformation in warfare where survival depends as much on remaining unseen from above as on holding ground below. As drones become ever more embedded in daily operations, they also alter the human experience of war in ways that extend beyond immediate combat effectiveness. The constant presence of drones overhead creates an atmosphere of perpetual exposure, where soldiers must assume that every movement could be observed, recorded, and acted upon within minutes. This erodes the traditional rhythm of battle, replacing moments of relative calm with sustained psychological tension. Sleep becomes fragmented, routines are disrupted, and the mental strain of anticipation accumulates over time. The battlefield becomes a space where invisibility is as valuable as firepower, and survival depends on discipline, concealment, and restraint as much as aggression. At the strategic level, the data gathered by drones feeds increasingly sophisticated targeting systems, linking sensors directly to shooters and reducing the margin for error or delay. This integration accelerates decision-making while narrowing the space for human judgment, pushing commanders to rely on streams of information that demand rapid interpretation. Mistakes, when they occur, propagate quickly, turning faulty intelligence into immediate consequences. At the same time, the sheer volume of data generated by drone surveillance creates its own challenges, overwhelming analysts and forcing prioritization under pressure. The war thus becomes not only a contest of weapons, but of attention, processing capacity, and information discipline. Civilian areas are not immune to this transformation, as drones blur distinctions between front lines and populated zones, complicating protection efforts and increasing the risk of collateral damage. The normalization of aerial surveillance also shapes how populations experience the war, introducing a sense of vulnerability that extends far beyond areas of active fighting. As the conflict continues, the drone war reinforces a central lesson of modern combat, that technological advantage is fleeting, and adaptation is constant. Systems that dominate today may be neutralized tomorrow, driving an endless cycle of innovation and counter-innovation. In Ukraine, this cycle unfolds in real time, offering a stark illustration of how rapidly warfare is evolving. Drones do not merely support military operations, they redefine the conditions under which war is fought, lived, and remembered, ensuring that the struggle for control of the sky will remain a defining feature of conflict long after this war ends. As the drone-centric battlefield matures, it begins to reshape command culture and decision-making itself, rewarding speed and adaptability over rigid hierarchy. Junior units equipped with real-time aerial awareness gain disproportionate influence, as localized observations can trigger immediate effects far beyond their size. This decentralization challenges traditional chains of command, pushing militaries to trust small teams with high-impact decisions while maintaining coordination across complex networks. The learning curve is unforgiving, as errors are exposed instantly and punished swiftly, reinforcing a culture of constant experimentation. At the same time, counter-drone measures proliferate, from camouflage and decoys to layered air defenses and signal deception, creating a continuous contest of measures and countermeasures. The battlefield becomes a laboratory where tactics are tested under fire, refined through footage, and redeployed within days. This rapid iteration compresses the distance between innovation and obsolescence, making resilience a function of learning speed rather than inventory alone. The economic dimension of the drone war further alters strategy, as relatively low-cost systems can impose high costs on adversaries by forcing expensive defenses and disrupting logistics. This asymmetry empowers sustained resistance while complicating efforts to achieve decisive superiority. Yet dependence on drones also introduces fragility, as weather, terrain, and electronic interference can abruptly degrade effectiveness, reminding commanders that technology amplifies capability but does not replace uncertainty. Over time, the normalization of drone warfare influences how risk is distributed, shifting danger away from operators and onto those observed and targeted, while expanding the ethical distance between action and consequence. This shift raises enduring questions about accountability, escalation control, and the thresholds of acceptable force in conflicts where visibility is constant and response is instantaneous. The Ukraine war illustrates that mastery of the drone domain is not merely about owning platforms, but about integrating sensing, protection, training, and decision-making into a coherent whole. As these systems entrench themselves, they redefine what it means to hold ground, to maneuver, and to endure. Control of low-altitude airspace becomes a prerequisite for survival, and the sky, once a backdrop, emerges as a decisive arena where wars are increasingly won, lost, and lived. As the war continues to evolve under the constant presence of drones, their influence extends into long-term strategic planning and post-war military thinking. Armed forces on both sides increasingly design operations with the assumption that concealment will be temporary and exposure inevitable, forcing a shift from avoiding detection to managing it. This mindset changes how defenses are built, how movements are timed, and how units accept risk. Rather than seeking invisibility, commanders plan for rapid dispersal, redundancy, and recovery after being spotted. The drone war thus encourages resilience over secrecy, adaptability over permanence. It also reshapes training, as soldiers are prepared from the outset to operate under continuous observation, learning to treat the sound of drones as a constant environmental factor rather than an exceptional threat. This normalization alters how fear is processed, turning anxiety into routine while exacting a cumulative psychological cost. At the same time, the growing reliance on drones influences civil-military boundaries, as civilian industries, volunteers, and digital communities become integral to sustaining capability. Software updates, component sourcing, and improvised solutions blur the distinction between battlefield and home front, making technological participation part of national resistance. This integration accelerates innovation but also widens the scope of the conflict, drawing more sectors into its orbit. Internationally, the lessons of Ukraine's drone war are closely studied, shaping procurement, doctrine, and legal debates far beyond the region. Militaries observe how low-cost systems can challenge conventional power, how information dominance reshapes tempo, and how constant surveillance alters human behavior. These observations will inform future conflicts, making the drone-saturated battlefield a baseline expectation rather than an anomaly. Yet the ultimate lesson is not technological alone. The drone war reveals that adaptability, learning, and organizational flexibility determine success more than any single system. Platforms will change, countermeasures will improve, but the capacity to evolve under pressure will remain decisive. In Ukraine, this evolution unfolds in real time, at immense human cost, offering a stark preview of how modern wars will be fought. Drones have not removed danger from war, but redistributed it, compressing time, expanding reach, and transforming the sky into a permanent arena of contest. As this transformation becomes permanent, it ensures that the legacy of the Ukraine war will be felt not only in geopolitics, but in the very architecture of future warfare, where survival depends on mastering an environment where the sky is never empty and the observer is always present. As drone warfare becomes inseparable from modern combat, it also reshapes how victory and loss are perceived, shifting emphasis from dramatic breakthroughs to sustained control of information and tempo. Success is increasingly measured by who sees first, reacts faster, and adapts more efficiently under pressure. This reframing alters morale on both sides, as gains may be invisible to the public yet decisive on the battlefield. A destroyed drone, a jammed signal, or a disrupted feed can have effects disproportionate to their scale, cascading through command networks and altering outcomes far beyond the point of contact. The fragility of these systems reinforces a constant state of uncertainty, where advantage is temporary and dominance must be continually reasserted. Over time, this condition normalizes a form of warfare defined less by decisive moments than by relentless competition across layers of sensing, communication, and response. For soldiers, the drone war collapses distance, making threats feel immediate regardless of physical proximity, while for commanders it expands responsibility, as decisions ripple instantly across connected units. This compression of space and time challenges traditional doctrines of escalation control, increasing the risk that localized actions could trigger broader consequences. Yet it also creates opportunities for restraint, as visibility can deter reckless movement and expose violations in real time. The same technology that enables precision strikes can document conduct, shaping accountability in ways previous wars could not. This duality underscores the ambivalence of drones as instruments of both harm and oversight. As the Ukraine conflict demonstrates, the decisive factor is not the technology itself but how it is integrated into strategy, culture, and ethics. Drones magnify existing strengths and weaknesses, rewarding disciplined adaptation while punishing complacency. Their proliferation ensures that future conflicts will unfold under constant observation, where learning speed, organizational cohesion, and moral judgment matter as much as hardware. The drone war thus stands as one of the most consequential transformations of the Ukraine conflict, redefining how wars are fought, experienced, and evaluated, and leaving a legacy that will shape military thinking long after this particular war fades into history. As this transformation settles into permanence, the drone war increasingly defines the boundaries of what is possible on the modern battlefield, shaping expectations for both commanders and societies observing from afar. The constant presence of aerial surveillance reduces the space for illusion, forcing military planning to confront reality in near real time. Deception remains possible, but it becomes more complex, requiring layered misdirection, decoys, and psychological manipulation rather than simple concealment. This evolution rewards creativity and patience, turning warfare into a contest of cognition as much as firepower. For Ukraine, the effective use of drones reinforces a narrative of adaptability and resilience, demonstrating how innovation can offset structural disadvantages. For Russia, the scale of drone deployment reflects an effort to impose persistence and exhaustion, normalizing constant pressure as a strategic condition. These approaches collide in a battlespace defined by attrition not only of equipment and manpower, but of attention, morale, and decision-making capacity. The drone war thus accelerates exhaustion, compressing the mental and physical limits of those involved. Beyond the battlefield, the normalization of drone warfare influences global norms, lowering barriers to entry for states and non-state actors alike. The lessons learned in Ukraine will travel, shaping conflicts where resources are limited but ingenuity is abundant. This diffusion raises profound questions about future stability, as surveillance and strike capabilities become widely accessible and increasingly autonomous. The ethical challenges posed by this shift remain unresolved, as laws and norms struggle to keep pace with technology that evolves faster than regulation. Yet the Ukraine war makes one conclusion unavoidable: the age of uncontested battlefields is over. Visibility has become the default condition of war, and survival depends on operating effectively within it. The drone war does not end when the fighting stops, its influence will persist in doctrines, industries, and expectations of future conflict. In this sense, drones are not merely tools of the Ukraine war, but its most enduring contribution to the evolution of warfare, ensuring that the sky will remain an active, contested, and decisive domain wherever wars are fought next. As the implications of drone warfare continue to unfold, they also begin to influence how societies conceptualize sacrifice and distance in war, subtly altering the social contract between those who fight and those who observe. The reduced physical risk to operators contrasts sharply with the heightened exposure of those on the ground, redistributing danger in ways that complicate traditional notions of bravery and duty. This imbalance shapes public perception, as precision footage can create an illusion of control and cleanliness that masks the enduring suffering experienced below. At the same time, the ubiquity of drone imagery collapses the gap between battlefield and audience, bringing moments of violence into immediate view and shaping emotional responses in real time. This visibility can strengthen resolve or deepen fatigue, depending on how narratives are framed and sustained. Militaries adapt by integrating drone operations into broader concepts of deterrence and defense, recognizing that dominance in the airspace below traditional aviation levels is now critical to any credible posture. The competition extends into supply chains, training pipelines, and software ecosystems, making sustained effectiveness dependent on organizational cohesion rather than singular breakthroughs. In Ukraine, this reality underscores a broader lesson of the war, that endurance in modern conflict is built on adaptability across society, industry, and the battlefield alike. Drones crystallize this lesson by linking innovation directly to survival, turning learning speed into a strategic asset. As future conflicts absorb these lessons, the legacy of the Ukraine drone war will endure as a turning point, marking the moment when constant observation became an accepted condition of warfare rather than an exception. The sky, once a domain of episodic control, is now a continuous arena of contest, shaping every movement, decision, and outcome below. In this transformed environment, mastery is not achieved by eliminating risk, but by managing exposure, uncertainty, and adaptation under relentless scrutiny. The drone war thus stands as a defining chapter in the evolution of modern combat, ensuring that the experience of fighting under unblinking eyes will shape how wars are planned, fought, and remembered for generations to come.